Well, there's like 45 questions, and we have to get through them in 56 minutes, so this will be fun.
Thank you very much for being here, first of all. I'll kick it off with, is this your first time in Turkey? And what actually brings you here to Istanbul this week?
This is indeed my first time in Turkey. So I've actually been here for about 3 weeks now. I came on the 29th. There was a 2-week Zorzalo gathering here called ZooConnect down in the south near that area close to the Galata Tower. So that was really interesting, and that went into a bunch of areas like both Ethereum and ZK and things that go a bit beyond it, and brain-computer interfaces and other fun things in that area. Then for this week, I've been at all of the various events that call themselves DevConnect, I suppose, and gave a whole bunch of presentations. 3 yesterday, fortunately, just 1 today, but it's been fun so far.
Perfect. And how do you feel about the significance of gathering the global crypto community in Turkey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Turkey is just obviously one of the places where there's just been a huge amount of grassroots interest in and adoption of crypto for a long time. And I mean, it's obvious from the statistics, it's obvious from just whenever I would make tweets, I would always see a huge number of responses in Turkish, and I'd always just click the translate button and be really curious about what kinds of things they have to say. The use case is obvious, right? I mean, I remember the first time I passed through the Istanbul airport back in 2013, and the rate was 3.5, and now it's 28. And when you're living through that, the value of just having some alternative thing to save money and just becomes incredibly obvious. And also, it's a place where a lot of crypto projects that have become internationally known and valuable, or either are Turkish or have a lot of Turkish people that are part of the teams, right? In this case, I mean, there's the Chainway team, there's the people, the Clave wallet, there's a bunch of others. That was just the examples from account abstraction and privacy that I've been focused on a lot recently. So yeah, and there's a lot of activity here, and I think in general, in the Ethereum community, we try to intentionally go around the world and go to where all of the different people are. So it's, this is a place I've definitely looked forward to coming to for a long time, and it's definitely fun for me to finally be here, and I hope all of the members of our community also benefit from the experience a lot.
Absolutely. I know the Turkish community have been looking forward to this for a long, long time, and that they appreciate it. And what are your sort of key takeaways and your highlights of having spent a prolonged period of time here?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely noticed that the interest in crypto is real, right? I walked down through the market in that peninsula down south, and just passed by at least 5 different shops that are advertising ETH, BTC, sometimes SHIB, and whatever else people are interested in buying. And there's just clearly a lot of just actual attention and a lot of interest, and just seeing the interest from builders, I think, is also one of those other things that has been really confirmed for me. So I think for a lot of us, it's just been good for building relationships, good for just getting our feet on the ground and just understanding the situation in some more detail. And I look forward to coming back. I look forward to working together more with all of the various teams that we've gotten to know better.
Perfect. And given that Turkey now reportedly has the highest levels of crypto adoption, the estimates range from, I think, 25 to 52% of people owning crypto, how critical do you think Turkey is as a hub for crypto adoption?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, I think what's interesting about Turkey, it kind of mirrors some things that I saw in Argentina, which is that like there is this combination of what is a dysfunctional environment in some ways, but with people who are very talented and who are like both just very sophisticated in like figuring out ways that to do the things that they need to do to like economically survive for themselves and their families, and to like actually build things that go further from there. So it's in environments where I think there is a potential for a really strong developer community to appear, like something that's even much stronger than what we've seen so far. So and I think a huge amount of potential for development. Obviously, already a very large amount of usage. Still a way to go in terms of like getting inroads for actually decentralized things and not people just interacting with crypto through like centralized exchange wallets. But that's a challenge everywhere, and that's like fair because the blockchains have definitely not been scalable enough or usable enough, and that's something that the space just needs to improve on.
Absolutely. And you mentioned some of the projects that you've interacted with since you arrived here in Turkey, but what type of new projects, I'm curious, have you come across since arriving here that sort of excite you? Or is it perhaps just the projects that you've seen and heard of in the past?
I think Clave is one of the new the ones that I've heard about for the first time here.
Perfect. Yeah. We have a question as well here from the community. It's what is your favorite Turkish dish?
It's a good question. Actually, I mean, I think the tea is up there. Like normally, I always just do green tea everywhere, but here, like I have the local, like the Turkish tea about half the time, and it's it's quite good. It's quite unique. I mean, definitely appreciate like not getting sugar poured into it. It's one of those I try to minimize sugar, and I always appreciate when people are helpful there without asking.
It is indeed a big tea-consuming nation. I think they even grow their own tea, surprisingly. And I know the Turkish community appreciates when people come and appreciate their goods and services as well. So we're going to move on very quickly to some Ethereum-related questions. The Ethereum roadmap was last updated in November last year. Can you give me an update on the Ethereum roadmap, considering its past, present, and future?
Yeah, and I feel like in general, the Ethereum roadmap has been stabilizing quite a bit over the last few years, right? And because historically there have been a lot of things that have changed because of just like changes in circumstances, changes in ideas, realizing that something doesn't work, realizing that something does work, new problems popping up. I think the big changes between last year and this year would be, one is just the realization that like there's something to be done about staking centralization, right? Like the status quo of the different pools and solo staking being hard and all of those things is not really healthy. And there's I think a big opportunity to do some redesigns to the staking system that really alleviates some of those issues and both improve centralization and even try to make the algorithm more efficient. And like, for example, just like have single slot finality, but only have like 10,000 signatures in each slot instead of not having single slot finality and having like 30,000 signatures in each slot, which is what we do today, right? There's a lot of room to try to, like once you make some trade-offs that I think realistically will have to be made anyway to really improve on efficiency and improve on decentralization at the same time. So that's one of the threads that I expect will continue to be worked on. Then data availability and that side of things is like basically probably a bit slower than we expected, but it's still moving forward on the same path as we expected. In general, on scaling, I feel like the pendulum has swung back slightly toward more off-chain data stuff, right? Because of both because the amount of near-term and mid-term demand is so high that like even the data availability that we can do is not going to be able to cover it, and because the level of security that you can get with off-chain stuff, I think, is higher than anticipated. Like a lot of the plasma ideas that I talked about a couple of days ago are probably a good example of that, right? But otherwise, still moving forward on data availability. I'm still moving forward on Verkle trees, snarking the EVM, all of the EVM improvement efforts, just all of those different things. So definitely, a lot going on the same path. I think nothing new on the functionality side. Maybe, unless you include like the whole off-chain data thing, but that's kind of, by definition, off-chain, like outside the layer one. So, it doesn't touch the core devs, yay. But it's, just sort of responding to threats and like making sure things like security and decentralization get preserved, and just like some fairly small tweaks compared to years in the past. So in general, the roadmap is stabilizing, which I think is a really good sign.
Perfect. And you mentioned that at the beginning of that response, some ideas had changed. Is it important for the community to view the roadmap as something that can be dynamic if new information is introduced into the equation and things can change? Or should they really think of it as guidelines that are more concrete?
And I think there is different tiers of ideas in Ethereum in terms of how much people are attached to them, right? So like at the top there is what people call immutability, right? That like the like hard forks should not just like arbitrarily go in and like take away some people's money and give other people money. And like as we've seen in the DAO situation, like that's something that people highly value, and trying to interfere with that is just like extremely politically costly, and that's something that's going to be true no matter what the changes to technology are. Then there's like a bit at a lower tier, like things like proof of stake, and like switching over from proof of stake, like back to proof of work, for example, would just be like totally politically unviable at this point. But like switching from proof of stake to a better proof of stake, then like there's, I think, a lot of room for discussion there. Probably more than last year, especially now that the whole pool centralization discussion has come into the foreground more. Then you have things like the EVM, and I don't think like community members are really emotionally attached to the EVM. I think there's a desire to make sure that existing applications can keep running, and there's a desire to minimize complexity. And like those two things together basically already add up to like roughly keeping the EVM, and if you add functionality, do it sparingly. But like beyond that, there isn't as strong an attachment. And then you have like specific algorithms that like can totally be changed if people want to. And then once you get into the weeds, it's just all technical features that a lot of people don't really care about, and they're happy to defer to the experts. So I think it's a spectrum between all of those things.
Perfect, thank you. And the Dencun upgrade is expected to be live early 2024. What should we know ahead of time, and what can we expect on that?
So EIP 4844 is obviously the big one. And what's interesting, I think, about EIP 4844 is that if you look at the roadmap to full danksharding, right? Full danksharding is the one that gives us data space that could go all the way up to like 16 megabytes a slot or even more. Once you have EIP 4844 like out the door. The only hard forks that you need to get to full danksharding are just a parameter change, right? Just like changing the maximum number of blobs. And maybe at some point we just make that a voting system, and then you don't need any more hard forks to go up. And so the rest of the rollout to full danksharding is not a change to Ethereum consensus or execution. It's a change to this extremely isolated thing that just says, like, tell me that this block can be downloaded if he wants to. And like at the beginning, that is just done with full downloading. But over time, like that can be done with data availability sampling, and data availability sampling itself can be upgraded over time. And that's like a piece that individual clients can upgrade, like even separately, even out of sync with each other as the network improves. So yeah, it's the sort of thing that like once you do the first step, doing the steps after that is relatively easy in the sense that it's just like a group of people working in the corner, and they don't really have to interact much with the rest of the ecosystem. And yeah, once the first hard fork's out the door, then it's like a smoother ride from there, which I think is really valuable and good. Yeah, I mean, there's things after that, like taking small steps toward getting rid of RLP is something that I'm excited about, just kind of cleaning up all of the different Ethereum consensus pieces. Yeah.
Quite a few exciting things to look forward to there. And I have a question for you on rollups. They appear to be too expensive, and they rely on centralized sequences, which introduces a degree of risk. So the question is, how will Ethereum address these risks?
Yeah, so the rollup teams that I've talked to and that I've asked on stage here in Istanbul, they're all very actively moving toward decentralized sequencing. And a lot of the time that just means like instead of one node doing the sequencing, have a consensus algorithm, just like take something like Tendermint off the shelf and just have it run a chain and then commit from that chain into the Ethereum chain, and then you have a decentralized sequencer right there. For roll-up data costs, there's basically two solutions, right? One is to like become a Plasma or at least a Validium and do off-chain data and try to be as secure as you can with that. And then the other is to wait for 4844 and then to wait for other things after that. And what I notice is that most of the roll-up teams that I follow are taking both approaches at the same time, right? Like, I think that this is true of Optimism and Arbitrum and Polygon. Like they all have a roll-up offering and they have a Validium offering, right? And if you want the higher security, you go do the roll-up. If you want the higher scalability, you go do the Validium. So I think that's something really interesting. And it is definitely the right choice. I think just because different applications have different needs in the short term. And then in the longer term, like either it just becomes clear what the split between the two is, or one of them improves to the point where the other becomes completely unnecessary. And so we'll see how that goes.
Perfect, thank you. And also a related question, when it comes to scaling rollups themselves, what do you think the main bottleneck is there?
In the short term, it's definitely data. Just having more data space that is guaranteed to be available. There are other bottlenecks as well. So one of them is just optimizing ZK provers so that they can make proofs as quickly as possible. Sometimes it's like how much they can process in a single thread. Like, I know 2 or 3 years ago that was actually the biggest deal for Optimism. Like they could not handle more than like 20 or 30 TPS within their own chain. And I think as activity in these rollups improves, like those kinds of issues are going to come back. And so they might need to do parallelization internally. They might need to do other things, which is going to be interesting to see. Yeah, I think like those are the three.
Okay, and moving on to user experience for a brief moment. It's another one of those barriers to entry rather for newcomers who find the UI complicated or unfamiliar or sometimes difficult to navigate. So how are you working on addressing this?
Yeah, I think there's different ways to think about the user experience problem. Like the one that I think about the most is like what I call the user experience of security, right? Like it's not user experience versus security. It's improving the user experience of being secure enough that you know that your APR next year is not going to be negative 100%. So that's like this is a big part of why I've been focusing so much on account abstraction, and there are wallet companies that are doing really fascinating stuff now with AA. Like there are wallet companies that are using like trusted hardware modules that already exist in people's phones to store keys, and basically having like relying on that more limited and more secure core. So your coins still have a layer of security even if the rest of your phone's operating system gets hacked. There are things like ZK email that try to like use even email addresses or other sort of more conventional things that people outside of crypto already have as guardians for their wallets to recover if they lose their keys. There are just ongoing efforts to try to make like the UI for like things like choosing guardians easier. And then on the application level side, and this is another whole big security rabbit hole, is like if someone sends you a link like, hey, here's an airdrop, and you go to the link and then it tells you to sign something in MetaMask, and then like if you're about to click it, how do you even know like is that a real airdrop or are you about to click something that's going to steal all your money, right? And like for most users this is super hard, and I think there's a big frontier of possibilities for wallets there to try to really improve and to do a much better job of helping users better understand what it is that they're about to sign. And like that does require wallets to really become much more opinionated and not just kind of show the hex and like be a static thing that where they just by giving people a bunch of 0 to 9s and A to Fs, so they think that they're finished doing their duty. Like it's something that will require the wallet to have a dedicated team and probably push out updates every month. But really trying to improve on that side of security, I think, is something that just is super important, and wallets are going to have to do more of.
Mm-hmm. And while we're on the topic of security, Ethereum.org states that security upgrades on the roadmap are in the advanced stages of research. So what improvements can we expect?
I think, if we're talking about the Ethereum L1, then the main security upgrade is just the proof of stake and hardening the proof of stake, like improving its decentralization. If we're talking about L2s, then the biggest security upgrade is going to be just making sure the ZK EVMs are hardened enough that there aren't serious bugs in the code. If we're talking on the user side, then I think there's like two ends. There's the keeping your coins safe within the wallet, and then there is keeping your coins safe while you're interacting with applications. And those aren't really protocol changes. Those are just going to have to be wallets that just actively responds to all kinds of threats.
Okay. Yeah. And a majority of Ethereum nodes currently run through centralized providers like Amazon Web Services, which leaves the system exposed to a centralized failure. So how do you see this being addressed going forward?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to this, right? One part is that we need to improve the software so that running through centralized providers just becomes less necessary in general, right? So ideally, something like the Portal network would just be active and would be running and really effective. And so we would have a decentralized peer-to-peer network that if you wanted to go ask for specific pieces of the state or history, you would go there into the Portal network and it would give you back a reply with proofs, and you'd be able to verify the proofs, and you would not have to verify and rely on centralized nodes at all. The best that we have now is Helios, which is a light client done by the A16Z team that basically uses ZK Snark over the sync committee, and that just allows people to have a really basic guarantee that they're following the correct chain, at least assuming the majority of the validators are honest. And if the So that is pretty limited in its functionality, right? Because that just tells you have the right block headers, and like users need a lot more than block headers, but it is a start, right? And if we just at least have like better hardening, like if we have better ability for users to verify Merkle branches locally and have light clients that run locally, then what you can have is you can have more but lower quality servers, and then you can do a one of n between them, right? Like you don't need to just talk to Infura, you can talk to like 5 different servers, and they could even be based in like 5 different countries that don't like each other if you care about minimizing even your political risk. And then you just like get your data from all of them, and then like locally you verify the branches, and if any one of them tries to trick you, then like they're going to give you a bad branch, and like you're not going to be able, and like the verification on your side is going to fail, right? So like going to one of n, I think, is also something that can be done. And then maybe we can eventually have a sort of utopian, like perfect peer-to-peer network where we don't need to have kind of servers where you explicitly have to type in their IP addresses at all. And that would be super basic, but I think it's going to take a bit longer to get to that. But I think realistically we can. We just have to work towards it. Yeah, and there's obviously the equivalent of that for just being able to push transactions. There's more sophisticated stuff too. Like I know a lot of dApps recently have been using things like the graph because they just need like specific claims about history that are too difficult for a regular node to get. And then like that also has its own decentralization challenges inside of it as well. So yeah, I think the answer just like is continuing to improve on technology and getting to the point where like you actually have that kind of verification.
Thank you. And on client diversity, it's important for a more resilient network. So can you explain why client centralization poses a risk and how Ethereum will address these challenges, particularly based on the execution client? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's 2 kinds of risks in client centralization. So there is the like software bug risk. Like basically if you have one client and there's something wrong with that one client, then like you're going to have a wrong chain, and that wrong chain is going to keep going and it's going to finalize, and look, that's bad. Actually, what a lot of people don't realize is like when you think you have one client, sometimes you actually have 2 clients. And like 2 clients is definitely worse than 5, right? 2 clients is worse than 5 because if you have 2 clients, then any bug, even a bug where like the results are inconsequential, is going to be a 50-50 split, and it's going to cause a really big problem on chain. If you have 5 clients, if one of them fails, then like that's only 20% and it doesn't matter, right? But one client, in theory, is 2 clients in practice because of versioning, right? So this is something that happened in Bitcoin back in 2013. There was a bug in the database of the Bitcoin Core client where one version would basically rely on the database to update blocks in a way where the database had a default setting that did not allow it to make more than about 5,000 changes at the same time. And a newer version had a different database that did not have that problem. And so there was at some point a block that made more than 5,000 changes, and it like basically triggered this split, and some clients rejected the block and other clients accepted it, right? And like that created a really big split on the network, and it caused like over a dozen blocks, like I think 4 hours of history to revert. So it got pretty bad. But if you have a diversity of clients, then like one of those having that kind of internal problem is going to be much less of an issue, right? So that's a technical issue. The political issue is basically like preventing one single client dev team from having too much power to set the agenda, and from entering into this situation where that one client team is like the only team that is competent enough to really continue moving things forward and propose ideas. And so if the community wants to move away from them, like they don't realistically have any other alternative to switch to, just because like no one else has been kind of actively exercising the muscles of like maintaining a client and is in a position where they can just step in and get the network to start relying on them. And so when like if you only have one team that's in that position, then like they might be able to like have a lot of leverage to push a lot of changes, right? And like in the future, that might even involve things like saying like, oh, Ethereum ecosystem is running out of money, and like we are the development team, and